I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now move on to approve the agenda today. I was just talking with my commissioners. It sounds like we're not going to vote to actually accept or deny the CUP today. We're going to vote today on the conditions of the CUP. So I want that put out before we get to that agenda item, but we'll go more into that once we get there. But I'd ask for a motion to approve agenda today.
So moved.
Those in favor say aye.
Well, I got the second also.
I think
So which one was the second?
Second.
Ron was.
Okay. So it would be an aye vote then, yes.
Motion carries. Consent agenda, minutes for January 30 meeting, accounts payable $168,066.12, payroll $416,013.33, paying checks $1,442.89, SD security wire $4,218, and indigent defense wire, $17,400. Utilities wire, $21,969.30. Escape tax, $25.94, and abatements of $8,660.30.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. I don't know why I'm grabbing. I'm going to move on to commissioner comments and committee reports. And do you want to start that off?
Okay. Last Thursday, we did not have a meeting and that mainly had to do with, we were down at Topeka at the state capitol. The KAC had at the Capitol Day, it gave us a chance to interact with some of the legislators and visit and also network with some of the groups and other agencies that were there. We had a table also set up. Jennifer, you had a little bit to do with that. And Janelle. So we were able to kind of showcase Dixon County, but not every county does that. But I think it's helpful that we're kind of on the leading edge of that, and it helps get the information out. And anyway, it was a good day there. Also, we had a meeting later that day that Chancey Smith had based on the snowstorm and things that had taken place, a review of that, procedures. Central Kansas Mental Health, I serve on that board. We have a meeting coming up. Also, when we were down at the KC, and we just talked about this a little bit earlier in the work study session, a young man came up, dressed up just like they all do at the Capitol, and he worked for a state rep out of Wichita. And anyway, he had gone through the recovery court here in Dickinson County and just, said that the recovery court, that was his turnaround in life when he had messed up as a younger individual. And so anyway, he's gainfully employed. He's working down there. And when you think of the impact that someone that goes through the recovery court, it's not that they're having return visits to jail or they're having other issues. They're gainfully employed, but also think of the impact that has as far as his parents and relatives and so on. So it really overlaps generationally, the positive impact. And so anyway, it was great to hear that success story.
Do you have any comments or report?
I'll just report I want to thank the county staff for doing a great job again. They always do. And I don't want to forget our producers out there, our farmers and ranchers that are having to deal with this weather. That's a tough situation for people. We need to recognize that folks are really working hard out there to be safe and conduct to feed us. So I do appreciate that. That's all I know.
Thank you. I also attended the County Government Day at the Capitol building. He pretty well covered it pretty well. I did happen to meet with Representative Hill for a time after we were there. Briefly discuss some of the stuff they're working on. I'm going to let him explain those as he comes back for his report. After that, we came right back, attended the AAR, the after action report with held by Chancey Smith. We heard from first responders around the Dickinson County. I think KDOT was also there and a few other organizations. Thought that was a great, useful meeting. Got a lot of different directions, a lot of different ideas out of that one. I'm with Ron. I'm going to thank everyone again. I'm going to thank the employees, the first responders, the citizens, anybody that was involved with helping during that snowstorm. Definitely was an impact to the fact that nobody ended up losing their lives. So I think it was a tremendous effort, and I want to thank everyone again. Also attended the EDC executive meeting. We went over some new goals and direction for the EDC. I briefly, and my notes are gone, so I just got to talk. We spoke about housing. We spoke about workforce initiatives, as well as policy initiatives with the cities and surrounding communities to try to spur more economic growth in the county, which is going to just help everybody. So I thought it was a great meeting. And going forward, I have big expectations for 2025. With that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Marcus. If you want to read the rules for public comments.
Sure. Per the Open Meetings Act, KSA 754317 and 754318A, as the elected board, the county commission is not allowed to meet or make any decisions without posting the meeting. They are only allowed to act on items on the agenda which they set. During the regular meeting, the county commission may allow for public comments on items not listed on the approved agenda. It is at the discretion of the county commission if they allow comments on agenda items. If you wish to provide comments, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address. If you are online, raise your hand and we will unmute you. State your name and address. Each person may speak for 3 minutes. The allotted time will start after the speaker has given his or her name and address. Public comments shall be addressed to the county commission only and not to the speaker or the audience. Only the county commission will be permitted to ask the speaker questions. The public comment period is not a back and forth discussion with the county commission. You should make your views and input known to them, but it is not a time to ask them questions. You should not expect them to respond to your comments. Comments may express support or agreement with previous speakers, but in the interest of time, please do not repeat the same information. You may state something to the effect of name and address, and I agree with the previous speaker. It is important to maintain a respectful, non-threatening atmosphere for anyone who would like to speak. Please do not engage in actions such as cheering, booing, clapping, insults, threats, etc.
I'll just add to that. We were going to take public comments on the CUP today. The rules say 3 minutes apiece. We're going to stick to that. We don't need to make this a lecture hall, but I do want to hear your comments and your opinions. So I think the other commissioners do as well. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Assistant County Administrator Marcus Rothschild's report.
Thank you. For this week, right now, we are working through the annual audit. And so I am currently in the process of just sending over all of our information from 2024 to the auditors. They will be reviewing that information on Monday, and then they'll be on site on Tuesday. So I'll just be working with them on those 2 days until we can finalize the audit. They've filled the mechanic position at the highway department. As you heard from Martin earlier, he was lucky enough to come on board just to start a night shift as the snowstorm came in, and it sounds like he did well. The highway department was out starting around 1:30 in the morning on Wednesday for snow removal and continued that through the evening and into the next day. Our sales tax collections continue to be strong as we started our first month of the year up about 5% to last year. And just a reminder to the public, we will be closed on February 17th, this coming Monday in observance of President's Day. Also, for future meetings and agenda items, the canvas, it was originally scheduled for yesterday, but just a reminder that's going to be held on Friday, February 14th at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you, Marcus. County Councilor Doug Thompson.
I want to share that one of the things we'll be working on will be the tax sale and we're moving forward with that. The second situation there will be, we'll try and have another one before this year comes to an end, so we'll get caught back up on the tax sale on the real estate. And then we are working on the recovery for Dickinson County and Geary County working together for the recovery. For those who are involved and have been involved in some addiction, and we're working with that. And that brings you up to speed with where we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
One quick question. So under our reports, and I know Janelle's online, I didn't know if she wanted to talk anything about the meeting that she participated in representing the state of Kansas, or that could be on the agenda maybe next time when she's here.
Yeah, if I can check with her. I'm not sure if it looks like she's away right now based on what I'm seeing on the screen. But I could for sure, I'll make sure to pass that along to her so that at next week's meeting, she could give an update on how that went.
Okay.
I spoke with her. She's watching her granddaughter. I'm sure she's a little busy right now.
That's not always a,
You're running in circles around her right now. She's 2 years old. And so if you remember what 2-year-olds are like, I think depending on what's going on at this moment, she may have got pulled off. So.
but she did attend a conference on behalf of the state of Kansas.
Yes,
And
give some updates on.
So there's probably some sort of report because it sounded like a pretty big deal and was kind of an honor to be considered to attend that. So.
Absolutely. With no notices or unfinished business or introduction of resolutions, I'm going to move to other business for the CUP 24-09 to expand operation of the rock quarry in the southwest quarter of Section 1, Township 13 South, Range 4 East. As I was saying in the beginning of this is more of a agreement to the conditions of the CUP. I'm going to let Tim allude to that. If you would come on up, Tim.
Okay, this is, I know you were not here for the other large scale project that we had, but for conditional use permits, they're either done one of two ways. Either certificates you sign that day, or they are, if it's larger scale projects, it involves, that involve a number of conditions, and that involves resolution. So what you would do is you could discuss and make a motion to either approve or deny today, and then direct staff to put together a resolution that has the conditions. And this is where the discussion on the conditions comes in. And this is what what we're going to talk about. So what I'll do is I'll review those conditions, and then we can, you can, in the end, when everything is done, when the public comment is done, you can then say, recommend, or you can either approve or deny that conditional use permit CUP 2409, or approve it or deny it, approve it with conditions that you specify me to put in the resolution next week.
I assume that means we can strike language as well if we wanted to.
Right. Okay. And so, but please find the attached conditional use permit for your consideration. Note that CUP 2409 will involve a resolution with a final approval of conditions that the county commission will sign at the next meeting. On December 19th, 2024, the planning commission voted to recommend approval of an expansion of the quarry in the southwest quarter of Section 1, Township 13 South, Range 4 East, generally located at the northeast corner of 2400 Avenue and Vane Road, at the request of David Walker, James and Rainey McLaughlin, with Bear Construction being their subcontractor. The applicant is in the process or has registered the site, and its Division of Conservation is conducting geotechnical tests on effects of blasting in the area. Bear Construction has submitted their license showing validity until December of 2025. The approval of the state of their, as well as approval of the state from their reclamation plan. Planning Commission in a 3-2 vote recommends approval of the request with the following conditions. Please refer to the other staff report that I had from the Planning Commission if you want to see the other conditions that staff had put on it. for the planning commission. But the applicant may continue operations in the west half of section 1, provided the applicant provides meets the requirements of the state of Kansas matrix of agencies. That's the Division of Conservation, Division of Water Resources, etc. The bond that is renewed, my understanding is annually, is submitted to the state. Typically, the state will not require a bond on their end if the local bond requirement exceeds $700 per acre. There is currently no record of a reclamation bond ever being submitted or held by Dickinson County for any previous projects. The only thing that I would probably want to put on this would be, I would need to know how many acres that bond would be in the amount for. The road maintenance agreement, if trucks utilize public right of way, the applicant has stated the use of interior roads for delivery of product to their sales division in Erie County. Your options for this case would be to approve CUP 2409 with conditions as submitted by the Planning Commission, or approve with additional conditions as deemed necessary by the commission. Staff would recommend the following additional conditions to those previously expressed above. Operations must not be less than the limits specified under KSA 49501. This has to do with setbacks, and as I said before, that has to do, we have a minimum setback for us would be 100 feet from the road right of way. The use of overburden to form berms or other form of screening between the quarry and adjacent residential uses along the south property line, provided drainage is not impacted. Updated area well study specific for the site. That would be something that would be due. I've got, usually what we do on this is we allow it to be submitted either within 60 days or showing significant progress towards achieving that update within 60 days. Annual inspection by county staff to verify compliance with the conditional use permit and the submitted plan. Applicant has agreed to maintain 1,000-foot buffer radius from the adjoining residential property in section 12. The other option would be to deny the request. This would only be an option if it's determined that there's proof that this would be inappropriate in this area. You can also look at if you disagree with some of the findings that staff had in their staff report that the Planning Commission considered in their meeting, you can deny it based on that. So like things like if you feel like there's changes in the area from what you've seen, that you feel would adversely impact. But other than that, given that the approval in 1997 and in 2001 for the Section 2 project, currently reclaimed, I think at this point, precedence has already been established for the quarry in this area. So with that, I will turn it over to any questions you might have about the conditions.
I guess I got mine answered in work session. You guys got any? If you don't, probably going to open this up to public comment. You guys all right with that?
Public comment.
Who all is here to talk about this CUP? Why don't we start with that so I know who to call on? We got one, we got two.
Not sure yet.
You're not sure yet? Okay. Why don't we start with you, sir?
My name is Mark Edwards. I practice law in Junction City, and I represent the landowner, which happens to be my granddaughter and grandchildren and son-in-law. She's also here. What I guess now that I've gotten here and heard how this is going to be approached, I think it's really important. I think that you're given the impression that the cow's already got out of the barn, and it hasn't. We're asking you to deny this CUP, and you alone have the authority to do that. All of this stuff that has been given to you by Mr. Hamilton is really not applicable at this point in time. We're asking you to deny it, and we've given you a lot of literature about how these rock quarries are being treated around the state of Kansas. It's very obvious that in addition to you deciding whether or not you want a rock quarry for a county that is zoned agriculture, your zoning laws are clear that we're an ag county. And if you're going to start trying to do asking for a conditional use permit, you have all the different types of documents, the types of businesses that are allowed there. But we're not really there. What we're there is at this point in time, we're saying that this is ag land and it should be treated as such. And they told you already, this was section 2, and they're trying to say somehow it was grandfathered from something that happened in section 2 over in Gary County. And there's never been anything in that southwest quarter of section 1 that's ever indicates that we have any kind of obligation to grandfather this particular land. And why the zoning administrator in this case decided it was okay to allow this to go forward without bringing it to the county commission, which is your own rules say you and you alone are the people that get to decide, are we going to allow this to happen? And we're asking you not to let it happen. And we've given you a lot of literature about how this is being approached. And all this idea that, okay, the cow's out of the barn, and now we're going to attach all of these conditions to it to allow it to happen. That's not what's in front of you. What's in front of you very clearly is, for the very first time, you get to decide, are we going to allow a conditional use for a rock quarry? The idea about what happened back from 1997 it's irrelevant. And I think I don't want you to get sucked into this idea that, well, today we're just going to kind of gloss over this and then we'll come back another time and attach all these requirements. That is really not what function is today. And we're asking you to deny it.
That's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a
Your questions for me?
question. Yes.
You can stay up here if they got questions.
Thank you.
So you've referenced a couple of things on whether it was grandfathered in from 1997, but then you also mentioned it should go before the county commission. So is your reference there have to do with when they started operating on an emergency or a temporary basis? In 2020, is that what you're referring to? Or I'm just trying to differentiate between the two.
Well, even if they operated on an emergency basis during COVID, if you don't do anything for a year after that expires, you're back on square one. Your own zoning regulations say that 106. So you have to come back. You know, the county commissions change all the time. We have new outlooks toward this. We have new ways to approach this. So this idea that somehow we're going to be able to rely on the past to bootstrap and get you guys in a position where you just think, well, the only proper way to do this is to continue allowing this CUP to occur. The county commission in Dickinson County has never authorized it.
And so
So this is a case of first impression.
were property owners notified in 2020? They, during that particular time, if something was considered an essential business, which,
That was an administrative call on my part at that time, determining that it was with what was going on there at that time in that section in 2020, that was to establish, I established that there was a legally non-conforming use in existence at that time. And so therefore, and that's why I set the limit of 1,000-foot setback. So if I knew that if something was going on, so it looked like there was probably some dirt work going on at that time, then at that point, then if blasting or anything, any change in that happens, then you would have to go through a conditional use permit.
Your zoning regulations don't allow the zoning administrator that kind of leeway. They're very clear. They go on for pages, but he doesn't have the authority to do this. And I don't think, I have not studied the minutes, but I don't think that there's ever been a situation where the county commission of Dickinson County actually approved this. And I know this landowner never got any kind of notice.
May I?
that I know, if there was an existing business, it was permissible. But in this instance, it
Well,
wasn't a.
whatever use was going on there, which it looked like it was primarily dirt work that was going on in that section at that time. There was no blasting, nothing going on like that. And so what I did is I basically established that as a legally non-conforming use based on, and I'm assuming if you read through our regulations, sir, it's 22-102, does give staff the authority to evaluate and determine whether something is a legally non-conforming use or not.
And it doesn't differentiate if it's existing business or
It says
something that hasn't been active.
divides it between land, existing land and existing structures. There's a section in there on existing land. And whatever is whatever land use is there, whatever the use is on that land. If it had a lease agreement, and I said, I don't know the whole wording on it, if there was a lease agreement or some sort of proof that there was some sort of contract between the property owner, Lawson, and Bear or Walker Stone prior to 2008, which is when our last regulations went into effect. Then that would be considered a legally non-conforming use as long as they provided documentation. So either way, he would still have to go through this conditional use permit process, is what I'm trying to say.
We know there's no agreement. You have the title policy is given there's no active agreement on file between the landowner and whether it be Mr. Walker or Walker Stone or Chris Quarry Properties or even Bear Construction Company. We know that the agreement that is on file expired in 2020. There's been now two more, we're now into the third year. There's nothing of the kind of documentation. There wasn't anything really at that time for the zoning administrators to know. So there's no agreement in place, and you're being asked again, you're being bullied into.
I'm gonna wait for a question. Thank you. You guys have any more questions? This gentleman
Right now.
Would anybody else like to come up and speak in concern of the CUP? State your name and address before you talk.
Yep, I'm Dave Walker, and I was the applicant for this conditional use permit. Give me a little history of that area. Originally was leased in 1973. And at that point in time, we started quarrying it probably a year later. And the zoning regulations were adopted in 1975. And so to me, where that property was already being used for quarrying, that would grandfather you in the new regulations that were adopted in 1975. We have quarried approximately, prior to 2020, we quarried approximately 80 to 90 acres in that north half of that section. And then at that point, we moved to a new location, which was, had a conditional use permit on it. I bought it and we moved over there. And we've been operating in that area since 1970.
Now, are both of these areas Dickinson County that you're referring to?
The areas that I moved to from this location was in Dickinson County, yes. Later on, we moved, I secured leases and purchased ground in Geary County, which we moved to. And then we've been quarrying in that area. There's a 4.5 mile wide, 3 mile deep area that we've been quarrying in for the last 55 years. In 2001, I sold the property, or I sold the business to Martin Marietta. And they operated it for 4 years. And their corporate determination was that they were going to move out of small markets. Anything that was under 1 million tons a year, they were going to move out of. And so they offered me the business back in 2005, which I bought back. And at the same time, I contracted Fire Construction because they were in the quarrying business and I had been competing with them for years. And we have an agreement that they're quarrying in my leases and on my land. So they have all the permits, the quarrying permit, the reclamation bonding, the requirements from the federal government and the state government are all with Fire Construction. They're operating my business. So
I'll make you one last comment.
I'm sorry.
Your 3 minutes is up. Let's make one last comment and we'll open it up to questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know there was a requirement.
Yeah, I'm doing it that way because that's our rules. 3 minutes apiece, make your piece.
You know, it's been an existing business for 55 years. This property has been leased from the current owner, who is the son of the original lease. And in 2000, we got the okay from the county zoning commissioner. And because it was COVID, the letter, I think you have a booklet that shows the letter, shows the emails that gave us approval. And there's nothing in there that says temporary. But when we were asked to get a conditional use permit, I agreed to do it because just to be, I knew I was going to have other conditional uses later, so I agreed to do that.
Okay.
So as far as any change in what we've been doing out there for the last 55 years, there's really no change.
I'm going to open it up for questions. You'd stay up here.
I'll talk a little bit. I'm one of those guys that rode the little bus to school, meaning there weren't many people in my area that rode the bus to school. I was the only one that rode the bus. But can we live together? We have two parties here. One wants to live in the rural area, wants scenic. Another company wants to be in business, manufacturing rock. Is there any way we can live together? Or are we going to fight all the way to this? Is there any compromise we can work together?
I sent him back in December a list of things that we would like done prior to, and they've never responded. We sent it in writing.
Sure.
And these are
Was that,
They are to abide.
was that ridiculous request that the neighboring people would like to have you do? Would you be able to honor that? Or is it,
I didn't hear what you said.
go ahead and repeat it to him if you will.
We sent a letter back in October with all the requests that we would like, if you're gonna do the quarry, and no one ever responded.
I didn't respond mainly because I considered it a more or less a threat or if you don't do this, we're going to go
Public extortion.
against you. But I had a meeting with her. I actually gave her all of the booklet information that I gave you, and told her that we would be willing to have a structural engineer look at her basement, look at her concrete, and have a hydrologist test her well. So to see whether there would be any damage. And of course, you also have a study that was done back between 85 and 95, which basically shows that there's no effect on the well because we're quarrying a ledge that's quite a bit above the water-bearing ledges, tables. So the letter I got referred to those things, but it also asked me to do things that I thought were not liable. But anyway, I've contacted the hydrologist. He's contacted Mrs. Edwards, and as far as I know, that they're planning to test the well. I'm
going to tell like it is. The county's not here to run off people that want to live in the rural area, and they're not the one to run off business. We want to work together, and we need each other.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be complicated, and we can sit in court for the rest of the year. I don't particularly want to, but I'd like to sit there and look at people in the face and say, how can we fix it? What do we need to do? And let's get moving.
Yeah. Well, I've offered those two things, and I have never gotten a positive response.
Okay.
Yes, we would accept that. We've put seismographs up close to her house, seismographs down by Jim McLaughlin's house, and there's a limit to how much material or how much blasting you can do, and we're not even close to a minimum of what we can use out there. I mean,
I understand.
and I mean,
And I'd like to see you folks sit together and figure it out.
well, basically, when I met with her, I said, what can we do? She said, well, we just don't want you there. And well, we've been there for 50 years, and I'm sure there's been 5 different families live in that house in the last 55 years. So, I mean, I'm happy to work with her.
Sure.
It's reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Other question?
I do not at this time. Anybody else? Do we have anybody else who wants to make a comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead and come up, state your name and address.
Mary Hilliard, 2210 2500 Avenue, Chapman. Good?
Yep.
Okay. I'm about 2 miles, maybe, from where you're talking about. I'm coming into this late. There's so many things, so many changes coming in our county that a lot of people are not happy with. And because it affects so many people out there, but not people in the cities. But yet the city people, it seems like that you guys are making decisions that affect us, but not y'all.
I live in
Unless it's affecting your pocketbook, the county pocketbook, right? So when it comes to this situation, you're not just that section. This is going to grow along with your wind tower project, right? That's what this is for, to provide rock for all your roads and all of that, and the foundations and everything. So it's impacting, so this situation is spreading. It's impacting more and more people as the projects go along. So with this project, and she's right there, he's right there. Do we need to maintain property rights? Absolutely. But do we also, like you just said, Mr. Ron, love your neighbor? And so if you can come to a compromise, hallelujah. You know, but it needs to, I'm concerned that this could just keep on creeping down even to our neck of the woods, to our houses, and to affect our water. Do what you want to do on your own property, so long as it's not greatly impacting those that are right there or the people as a whole. So just love your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to address something. I believe this quarry was in place long before the wind towers were discussed. So I think they were operating before that. I don't think this is for the wind towers.
Oh, no, but I mean, there is an expansion and it's coming. So they're going to need that. That's part of it. We know that. So,
Let me make a comment.
Betsy Edwards, 2394 Bain Road, Chapman. So, and just in response to Mr. Walker, I probably have told Mr. Walker it's not, I don't particularly want him next to my house quarrying as I watch a quarry. And I don't think that's really an unreasonable thing, that most people wouldn't want a quarry right next door to their family's home. The other thing is the quarter section we're talking about is just the quarter section right next to our house. And that has never had quarrying on it for the entire time we've lived there. And I'm pretty sure it's all native brome that hasn't ever had a quarry on it. So I think we're talking about different quarter sections. Mr. Walker, you know, we said we agreed on a hydrologist with him. We reached out to Ned Marks. He said we like Ned Marks. We called Ned Marks. Ned Marks said I have to get with Mr. Walker and we'll get back with you. We've never heard from Ned Marks again. We said suggest a structural engineer and we'll see if we can baseline the property before you start blasting. And then it will baseline it upon reclamation. And if there's an attributable difference from the structural engineer, we would like the difference if there's, you know, structural damage to the foundation. You wouldn't do that. We've never heard from a structural engineer. Mr. Walker told me and my husband after the meeting last time, well, your well's just no good and it'll never survive the quarrying that I plan to do. Well, a house without water doesn't have any value. And so since we haven't followed through on anything we've said, and we haven't followed the procedure on anything about how CUP should be done, I guess it's not unreasonable for me to think, well, there isn't going to be any follow through. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be stuck with a house with questionable water. And there's not going to be a whole lot of recourse for me, especially if we're talking about something that's going to take 10 years until it's done. I think this is a really good opportunity for the county commission to say that we don't think that commercial and industrial uses is appropriate within a quarter section of people's rural residences. And we don't think that when most people in Dickinson County, their most valuable asset and all their net worth is in their house. I'm the same way. So let's protect the rural residents and say, you get to protect your assets. And, you know, maybe you need to be at least a quarter section away from a house before you do industrial blasting and commercial types of endeavors.
Let me ask you a question. When did you purchase this house and move in?
So we moved, okay. My fourth son was 6 months, January or December, January of so it was either December 14 or January 15. We've lived there about a decade.
About a decade, 10 years. Okay. There was a quarry, maybe not in the quarter section adjacent to your property, but there was a quarry in the quarter section adjacent to that.
No,
Was there not?
Across the county line or?
across the county line there was, and
So I'll direct that question to you guys. How long have you been quarrying in Dickinson County?
55 years.
Across that river, correct?
Yeah.
Right in the same location we're talking about, but you're going to move a quarter section to the south, east or west, correct? Southeast,
there
sorry.
was, in that whole section,
Mhm.
there's never been a quarry that's been visible in that section across the road from us.
Maybe not, but there was a quarry there.
Back behind there,
Yes.
back behind that section.
So is it unreasonable for a person to assume the quarry might grow?
I think that it is unreasonable to assume that you're going to let quarries get that close to residential structures. And I think that it was never in that section. I mean, it was more than a mile away. And
Here's what I'm getting at here. I fear prohibiting economic growth for a company based off the fact that we don't like something. That's not a good way to run a county. There's a lot of things I don't like about feedlots, but I live right next to one. And I chose to live there. I'm not saying you're wrong and saying you'd like to keep your property value. I agree with all that, but I bought a house next to a feedlot. I know what the smell is going to be like. That doesn't give me the right to tell them to shut it down. No, I'm just making a comment. I don't want to argue. I'm just saying it doesn't give me the right to, hey, I don't like the air pollution, shut it down. That's just something you can't do. And that's what I think they're trying to do. But I just thought I'd ask the question.
Isn't that like a mile away or?
Literally my house, quarter mile away from my house, not even. But I guess what I'm getting at is when you buy a house in the country, there's going to be some activity going on that maybe you don't agree with. You should be thinking about that. But
Anything that happens in the country can't happen in town.
I agree.
And it can only be happen where it's liable. If you look in your booklet, you'll see the areas that we've quarried in the last 55 years. And you can see that the quarry that we have quarried in that section, in the north half of that section, in prior years. And if you take a aerial photo of this area today, you can't hardly see where we've been because it's all been reclaimed, grass, farmland. And so if you look at that area, that's what we've been doing for the last 55 years.
Thank you.
In fact, a lot of it's over in Geary County, but I just point out that we have quarried in that in that section.
Are there gaps in that 55 years though? Are there gaps where you,
No.
a year or two without?
No gaps. It's been continuous production for 55 years. It's not all by me. Martin Marietta did it for 4 years. But between 1970 and 2001, I quarried it. Martin Marietta from 2001, 2005, and Byers from 2005 to current.
I had another comment. Some of you can go ahead and sit down, Mr. Walker. Maybe some of you don't know, but the price of rock is increasing every year to the county. I believe last year we spent, don't quote me here, I think $465,000 on rock for our road maintenance program. And if we want to shut quarries down and increase our costs and increase your taxes thereof, say it now. But as far as I've heard, we don't really want to do that. I don't think it's advisable to do that. That's my opinion.
You're not away, like he said, that would be awesome if y'all could work together. Just.
I'd love for that to happen, but that's not
She needs.
something I don't think the county commission can facilitate an agreement between two parties. We're not a judge or a court, a law. We're here to approve permits and say whether it's by code or not. Correct, Tim?
Correct.
So in my purview, it's a checkbox. Is he checking the boxes or not?
the conditions that are placed on a conditional use permit do take into account the surrounding areas to protect those areas to the best of our ability, you know.
And set by policy as well. So.
So Martin, the trucks, what's the impact on the county road per se and per product or?
No different than what the grain trucks are doing to it, you know, during harvest. I don't, it's a public road. They pay taxes. They do all the same things. So impact or not, a little rutted up or more, but it happens. You get complaints about the rock all over the county and there is no quarry there either. The roads are what they are. I don't believe they are doing any extensive harm to us. Like I told you before, they did Hams did a little work south of a road coming out and put dust control on it for in the town, Liberty Township. But all in all, you know, there's no harm. Nobody, the sand plant's running arguably just as many trucks over here off of Sand Springs. And we made that road a better road over the years than what it was. But the impact is not there. I venture to say we have not a big percentage of worse roads around the quarry than we do in any other part of the county.
Thank you, Martin.
We do not use county or township roads. All of our rock goes across the river into Geary County and is sold from that yard. There's no truck traffic on the quarry side, the Dickens County side.
So you do the delivery of the product from that quarry or mining operation and then drive across your own land to get to
Where we quarry,
the station?
we have our own roads that take it to the plant. It's produced there, it's shipped across the river and it's sold out of the yard in Geary County.
So not a public road, it's a
It's
private road
Yeah,
inside that
Yeah.
section. Well, this is kind of going back on what Ron had mentioned. Keeping the footprint in check. I mean, I think that's a little bit of an issue is how far away it's removed from property owners. Is there a reasonable setback? I guess, I don't know whether this is for Betsy or Mark. Is there a reasonable setback to consider on something like that?
We talked about, at least 1,500 feet from the road. So from the right of way, they can stay back 1,500 feet. And then we asked for the structural engineer with the baseline evaluation and then the evaluation afterwards. And then we wanted the guarantee of water with a well. And we wanted, I'm reading this letter and it's threatening. I'm unclear where, but, that's really.
So 1,500 feet, you're talking a quarter mile.
I think that within a quarter mile of residence is fair.
Right now it's set at 1,000, correct? If we approve these conditions.
100.
It would be 100 feet if you
Okay.
said it, but it's the applicant has agreed to stay 1,000-foot radius buffer around the adjoining property's residence. So
Same thing, correct?
Just about 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet.
Do we have any more questions, any more public comments? I believe it's probably.
Well, I didn't know if Mark was responding to that
I
also.
just wanted to just say, again, I don't think we need to get too down into the deciding whether or not we're going to impose the conditions or what conditions. We're happy to submit the letter to you. But the more important thing is that land is not under any kind of a lease agreement with the property owner. And you know, there's a lot of steps that you have to go through to get to where we are, but they've just catapulted clear over and said, with the county zoning administrator saying, yeah, it's okay to go ahead. Mr. Chamberlain made it very clear, you're going to proceed on your own, at your own risk. And we're talking about land that's not under any kind of an agreement. And, you know, I think there's a lot of other things that they could do to make this whole situation a lot more legal than they have. And they've just chosen not to. And, you know, this letter is not threatening. We'll share that with you. But again, those are these conditions. We wanted them to go ahead and agree to the letter. There's no threats in that letter. And so, you know, it's right. They just continue to do things that they want to. We're told, sign in before you get up here to speak. Did they do that? No, they just do what they want to do.
Okay. I don't want to throw insults around, guys. Let's be respectful. Let's just.
Let me just say one thing. I did not present that letter because I considered it extortion. And then in the letter, it asked me to drill them a new well. It had to be 10 gallon a minute and provide auxiliary power. And I did not present that because I considered it extortion. And so, I mean, I'm willing to work with her to do what we can do to minimize the effect of the quarry. But I'm not going to stand here and get, you know, have that kind of demand.
I agree with what Ron's saying. I think you guys do need to work it out. I'm going to say this again. We're not a court of law. We cannot hold two parties obligatory to each other. Only a judge in a court of law can do that. I think you'd agree. You're an attorney. We cannot do that for you. All we can do is look at the permit and the conditions laid before us and agree whether it's in compliance or not. So, you know, when it comes to an agreement, I don't know how you guys are going to work it out, but we couldn't hold you to it even if we decided to try to work it out with you. So once again, I'm looking at this from a permit basis. Are we checking the right boxes? Does our zoning and planning commission agree? They do. That's how I'm gonna rule this. That's how my vote. I'm only one vote of three, but just so everyone's understanding.
I'd like Tim to review conditions. Just kind of point by point. I know you did already, but
Okay.
And one of the things I would consider we have the ability to increase that buffer radius or the setback. So that's one consideration. Because I think you do need to protect the property owners that are living in an area. And then you still have the economic development, which we need. And the property owner has, to a certain point, a right to do with their own property as long as it's not adversely impacting someone else. That's philosophical, and there's
Well,
area.
there's a gray area there, but it's basically the conditions that are placed on any conditional use permit usually are addressing those concerns for the surrounding area to the best of our ability. We can't resolve every issue, but
If you have a motion to change any of these, what I'd like to do is first motion to change the wording of a condition or multiple conditions or strike it. Once we've agreed on that, we'll vote to approve the conditions after that fact, as they said, as a whole.
They're reasonable.
And basically you would have to make a move to approve or deny CUP 2409, and then with the conditions that you specify that I can bring back to you next week as a resolution.
But those conditions could be addressed to a certain point now.
Yes, yes.
As far as I'm concerned, we can change these conditions,
Okay.
Lynn. I mean, that's within our purview, I believe. So if we want to do that, now is the time. I guess I'm going to go ahead and wrap up comments. I think we've had a lot. I'd like to start to get some motions out here, what we'd like to do, unless you have another question.
Well, just for the conditions, if you go,
Want me to review them all again?
yeah, because there's only 5 that you have, correct?
Well, the 5 from the planning commission, and then I was recommending some additional ones too, if you want.
Okay.
For those.
That's on the back of this page.
The planning commission is recommending approval. The applicant may continue operations in the west half of section 1, provided the applicant complies with all requirements of the state of Kansas matrix of agencies. That would be the Division of Conservation, Division of Water Resources, et cetera. So item 2 is dust abatement plan, since this project is within a quarter mile of a residential structure. Item 3, updated site plan for this location prepared by a licensed surveyor to indicate I've got state approved setbacks. What staff is going to recommend is that we require the 100-foot setback. A reclamation bond in an amount acceptable to the county engineer and the state. My understanding is, as I had mentioned earlier, that I think that this has already been, I think this is a bond that is held by the state. It's renewed annually. Yeah. And typically the state will not require a bond if the local bond requirement exceeds $700 per acre. However, as I stated earlier, the county, Dickinson County, has never held a bond for any kind of reclamation. That's usually held at the state level. Item 5, road maintenance agreement. If trucks utilize public right of way, the applicant has stated the use of interior roads for delivery of product sales in Geary County. Commission options, and this is where I'm going to go over my additional conditions that I placed on it, which is approve CUP 2409 with conditions as submitted by the Planning Commission, or approve with additional conditions as deemed necessary. Staff would recommend the following additional conditions to those expressed above, which is operations must not be less than the limits as specified under KSA 49501, which states that for every foot of depth excavated, at least 1 foot of unexcavated land between the excavation site and the property line of the person who owns that land being excavated. Again, this goes back to the 100-foot setback I was telling you about from property lines and from the road right of way. Use of my second requirement would be use of overburden to form berms or some other form of screening between the quarry and adjacent residential uses along the south property line. And I believe there's one along the north as well, a property to the north. But this is provided that drainage is not adversely impacted.
Do we need to add that language? I don't actually see it on this sheet. Okay.
If you want to,
Well, I
yeah.
think we do. If that's the way it reads, it needs.
Yeah, I added that, and I apologize. I added it this morning.
Would you go ahead and repeat that then?
Yeah, I said use of overburden to form berms or other form of screening between the quarry and adjacent residential uses along the south property line. And what I would do is I would just say along the north, anywhere there's residential, that would be the north property line as well, provided drainage is not adversely impacted. I have included as well.
So I think probably how I would do that is strike the word south and just keep property lines
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
then add provided drainage is not impacted.
That's better.
We'll have the motion for that to do that.
Okay, and item 3 is updated area well study specific for that site. I usually have any documentation, this would include the site plan as well as the study, would be due within 60 days, or at least proof that they are working on it, showing that they are in the process of working on it within 60 days. The annual inspection by county staff to verify compliance with the conditions of the conditional use permit. The applicant has agreed to maintain a 1,000-foot buffer radius from the adjoining residential property in section 12. So that's the one I think you had said you were curious if you could adjust. And so I think that, the other option that you would have this case would be to deny the request. This would only be an option if it's determined that there is proof that this use would be inappropriate in this area. Given, like I say, if you feel that there have been changes in the area that you feel would this use would at this time be adversely impacting them, and changes usually meaning changes in land use patterns. So if there's an increase in residential areas, which there isn't in that area, the residences that are there have been there for a long time. However, given that the approval of 1997 and 2001 of the quarry in section 2, which is to the west of this section, is currently reclaimed, precedence has already been established for quarries in this area.
If we added the quarter-mile setback, is there an unintended consequence, or is this a quarterback setback from any residential property?
You could make that, you could probably put that in there too. That would be up to you. I mean, as far as adversely impacting, that would, it would just, if you're talking about a radius like what the applicant is proposing, they're just going to be going up another, 500 feet from where they've already proposed. So they were already proposing 1,000-foot radius from the one in the south. So 1,000-foot radius from the one from the property that's adjoining to the north also. I don't know if that would be if the applicant has already agreed to the 1,000-foot radius, then 1,500 wouldn't be that difficult to reach. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, I know there's a difference between the 1,500 and quarter mile, but we probably need one or the other, but.
Well, quarter mile, yeah, quarter mile. And depending on, given the size of this section that they're operating, that would, it would be up to, you all would just, as long as they stayed within that realm, within that narrow band of operations, they would be able to still work.
But it would limit the amount that they were able to expand. I mean,
Correct. That would.
Defining boundary line.
Yes.
Within that section. I guess the other part, does this address the request that they had for a structural inspection of the house?
That would be that's more of a civil agreement between the applicant and the property owner. That this wouldn't necessarily, I can't comment as to whether that would impact that or not.
I don't know what I was saying earlier. Some of these agreements they're trying to make, I don't think we can enforce them.
Too much definition.
It's getting to a point where it's beyond our legal purview, I think. So I'm gonna make one motion here. I would like to motion to add wordage to the additional options number 2, use of overburden form berms and other form of screening between quarry and adjacent residential uses along the property line, provided drainage is not impacted. My motion would be to strike the language south and add the language provided drainage is not impacted. I'll make that motion.
I'd like to amend that to also include the quarter mile setback.
Okay. Would that be item number 5?
Yes.
Okay.
So we would strike the word 1,000-foot buffer and add quarter-mile buffer.
Maybe, yeah. From any existing residents.
I think that says it right here, adjoining residential property in section 12. Should we, yeah. Yeah,
There's an old abandoned house that wouldn't be included in the setback, but
I think it's residential property, so I think to be a residential property, you gotta live in it, correct?
If it's abandoned, yeah.
If it's abandoned, it wouldn't be considered residential, yeah.
So procedurally, we need a second to the amendment to attach to the
We do, we need to.
motion. And then we can consider.
I'll
the
second
motion.
it. Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Wording has changed. I am now going to move
So
this.
that puts the amendment onto your motion. So now we need to vote on your motion, which includes that last amendment.
Well, we amended we amended, so we motioned to amend the wording. Now we need to make a motion to accept or deny.
Accept or deny that one.
I'm going to motion to accept the conditional use permit conditions. The first 5 that are on the here that were listed by Tim, in addition to the additional conditions to the CUP. So just to be clear, my motion is to accept the language that we've just defined and to accept the additional conditions that Tim Hamilton has set forth in the suggestion.
So that includes item 2. That also includes item 5 of the
Yes,
Yes.
order.
Correct. Yep,
yes.
as amended. Yep. No seconds?
I'll second it.
All right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. So next week, we will bring a resolution to this county board with the conditions that we just set and in the form of a resolution.
Yes.
Thank you. That is going to conduct the business for today, and I'm going to motion to adjourn this meeting unless we have any more comments.
I'll second that.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.